Thank you so much, Jackson, and thank you all for being at this amazing event. As you can see, Jackson is just such a beautiful, strong heart, and when he told me that he wanted to create Aurea and do the original event, I was just more than happy to invite the other beautiful people in my life. So thank you again, Jackson, Jeff, for making it happen. And yeah, it was very powerful what we all just witnessed, and it is absolutely what this golden age we are referring to is all about. Being able to hold space like that is just such a beautiful thing for the darkness that is also a big part of why we incarnated. So what I want to talk a little bit about today is really about just life, really. I mean, really, I am very excited to discuss the topic of what will probably be my next book. Ancient Futures is the tentative title, and it has a lot to do with cosmic love as well. So the first half will be a little bit pedagogical, I have a little PowerPoint, but the second half is a discussion with my father, who is a professor, and Tia Kansara, who you know now. Amazing Tia, my partner. So let's see if this works. I think the clicker, we had some trouble with it before. Oh, this way, that's right. Oh, okay, here we go. So it takes a bit of hubris to talk about the great mystery, and ultimately, that is what I'm here to try to do. It's ultimately about embodying it in our experience. Yet, I come from a lineage of men that try to understand the entire universe. My father is also one of those who's come up with a theory of everything, and it's in my nature to also try to do that. And I have come to conclude that, the human heart is capable of comprehending the infinite, and the mind is not, but it is a worthwhile thing to try to do. So tonight we're going to try to do that. We're going to try to encompass it all and somehow wrap it up into something simple and something felt and beautiful. So you see a few things here. Okay, this, by the way, is evidence of God, obviously, anyone who's seen a peacock. And, this has always been a great... This is sort of what I did back when I was in college. I was an existentialist, and we asked questions like, why is there something rather than nothing? We felt really bad about ourselves, and we wore black, and ultimately, now it's quite the opposite. I mean, there's so much to explore and love about the fact that we are incarnated, and yet the human fascination with life can go in a couple directions, like this unwitting psychopath on the left here, who's probably got an A+, and this failing student who's connecting and loving the frog. So that's something that, as a son of a biologist, I sometimes have referenced this. He would take me into his lab at Rutgers University, and he'd have a liver of this animal still pulsing and trying to do experiments on it to understand life. And it's such a great metaphor for biology, which is the study of life, because it is somewhat necrophilic. It's really a fixation on breaking down life into its constituent parts, and ultimately life is no longer part of the equation. You have structure, you have the visual aspects of the things you're trying to understand. And so I'm just reminded that that's part of the hubris again, and part of the trap of doing what I'm going to attempt to do, is to try to wrap the whole thing together into some kind of logical framework. So this is the device that we used earlier today to apparently perform a rather successful experiment of coherence within the room and projecting our intention through Tia's amazing gifts and Mia doing the sound rolls and all of you who were in the room, to affect across space and time, an experimental condition in England. And in rudimentary results so far appear that, yes, we may have affected that cymoglyph transatlantically. My father, however, has a specific algorithm he has identified that it will enable us to dissect beneath the level of the analog or the aesthetic aspect of the glyph to discern whether there was maybe a smaller change not detectable from the visible eye. So now, why is there a pyramid here by this cymoglyph? It's because John Stuart Reid actually devised of this device by traveling to the Great Pyramid and going to the great room, the chamber where the sarcophagus is, and he was laying in it. And ultimately, let's see. He had a healing experience, and so the device, the cymoscope, was actually conceived following him being in that chamber. And ultimately, so far, it's almost like what the telescope or the microscope is for the realm of human knowledge and discovery, is that now that we have a device that enables sound to be transduced visually without radically changing the object of study, so cells can also be observed through their sonic signature and transduced into cymoglyphs and then understood through this new device. It's a way of understanding life while it's still living, basically, because all of our cells have a song, and you can sonify those sounds. You can put them into the cymoscope and see them. So it's almost like a new form of biology has now been given birth, and it was in the pyramid that this all happened. We will be returning there later this year with a portable cymoscope, which is going to enable us we can bring a projector, for example, and in real time transduce the acoustical signature of the Great Pyramid, which is going to be pretty amazing because we might further unlock some of the mysteries. But I wanted, so here. So interestingly, you can imagine how profound it is that this device is enabling you to dissect the sonar beam of a dolphin. So you have this interspecies communication potential. See here on the left, they did a study where they were able to ascertain what might be rudimentary decoding of dolphin language, which is really profound because of the lead up to what I'm going to be talking about in terms of maybe intergalactic communication next. And also my father, interestingly, coined the term cosmese to describe this cosmic language that would pervade the universe. So once again, there's a reason why you're seeing these images here together, and I'm just going to have to click through. Okay, so these are actually cymoglyphs that my partner and I did at John's lab, where he was able to transduce our soul vibration, if you will. And interestingly, Tia's was a 14-fold, and mine was a 6-fold. And according to John Stuart Reid, the 14 and 7-fold glyphs are indicative of highly evolved spiritual beings in terms of having done a lot of work. And knowing this woman, I know she spent many, many lifetimes coming here, leaving, coming here, serving, many celestial things that I've witnessed her do. So this is also going to be significant later when we talk about the intergalactic glyph, perhaps that has been also recorded. Okay, this is Tia and my glyph put together, because one of the beautiful things John does, his partner Annalise, is this beautiful woman who's also very talented in terms of connection to the Akashic, is they make a Vesica Pisces out of the two glyphs. And they do also offer this on cymoscope.com if you'd like to give a gift to your loved one. Okay, let's see. Okay, so interestingly, so this is a story about really being connected to another realm. And before I met Tia, my reader at the time, who was incredibly gifted, she caught in a reading before I met Tia that there was a chalice well. And the chalice well is very specifically located in Glastonbury in the Red Spring, which has been flowing for several thousand years. It's a sacred place. And it was a premonition, because my entire life, from when I was very young, I would connect with these readers that would then tell me my future. And you've all heard fortune telling. It has a real dark side, obviously, that anyone could preempt your free choice, or that it could condition how you might live your life if you knew ahead of time what would happen, as if you're not the creator of your life. needless to say, at the time that I saw this woman in West Palm, her name was Gloriana. I was a deeply troubled youth, having a lot of issues, and she saw my future, and she said, when you're going to be in your mid-40s, you're going to be a well-known author, and you're going to, best-selling book, and, at present, Regenerate is in 8 languages. That did happen. So, at the time, I had no conception I would be an author, but this woman was able to intervene, and at the time she said, they don't normally tell you these things because they don't want to affect your free will or make you think that it's all predestined. So the same thing happened with Tia. Before she even came into my life, this symbol came up, and this is where she took me the second day we met, was to Glastonbury, and this was completely a coincidence. Coinky dink, as Bella says, my daughter. So you'll see on the top of that thing is the Vesica Pisces, and that's a very powerful symbol that connects even to my first talk, Lastoria, which is about the binary star system that our star is in with Sirius A, according to some scientific evidence. And this connects to the sacred dynamics that I think will usher in the golden age, because that's ultimately what the talk is about. Which is also why I would reference the cosmic love story that I myself have been participating in with my beloved, and it has a lot to do with the notion that in Vedic cosmology and other such cosmologies, they overlap in ways with our understanding of present phenomena, like the supermassive black hole on the right, which is the center of the Milky Way galaxy, that's just blowing these incredible streams of matter and light into existence, and that this complementarity between destruction, creation, in relationship, in everything is part of the love story of being incarnated. Let's see. So many of you have been in relationships where you figure out later that why you fell in love was because there was an eroticized wound structure that ultimately usually comes from your parental relationship. So you fall in love with your mother and your father in ways, and the two cookies come together forming the whole. And that's how a lot of us come to fall in love initially. I went through that several times, and in my last breakup, I came to realize I'd never loved myself, and that is the key to how you ultimately call in your beloved, your sacred partner. And so Tia here is my sacred partner because we both have a commitment to kindness to self, self-love first. And that's ultimately what I've come to realize about Golden Age concept, is that yes, there is a astrophysical component. The precession of the equinoxes reflects the fact that there is some force that is pulling on, the Earth, causing a backward motion in a 26,000 year, Platonic year, that puts us through these ages, like the dawning of the Aquarian age is because of perception. So ultimately, there's an astrophysical component to how we are given the opportunity to move into this new age, and I highly suggest the Lost Lost Star of Myth and Time by Walter Crutenden. It's all about the binary star system explanation for precession, and it's a beautiful story because most known suns in the universe, they have a partner. So we're not really by default alone. But so when you have two holes that come together, 3, you end up having this mandorla, which is like a portal. And as more people come into wholeness within themselves and reach that state of self-love, we start to develop this sacred geometry of relationship. So when you have these circles, like even what we witnessed here, it's a beautiful representation of how the flower of life for this new age forms. It forms spiritually, it's anchored into our being, into our heart, and then of course in the relationships we have with one another. Okay. So I've been on a great adventure with Tia all around in the past year and a half to try to figure out certain things. Some of them include megaliths, like how is it possible that there are 1,000-ton megaliths that are just seemingly carved out of these massive quarries and levitated and put into place? And so we've been on this epic journey together and crossing ley lines and connecting to different grids within our being. So that's why, for me, this presentation sort of turned into a little review of my relationship from the past year and a half. In fact, just in April, we were in this little boat here in Guam. We chose to do this, barfing our brains out in 16-foot waves, trying to get to the deepest part of the ocean to do a ceremony like presenting flowers and doing chanting. And I've done ayahuasca and I've never thrown up, and I was barfing my brains out the whole time. So, and it was during a Pluto hard square to the south and north node, and I knew it was supposed to be that way. And there's actually an astrological overlap with what's happening right now. But, so it has not been pretty, and it's not been easy. You know, it's not like always fun to go travel to places when you're called to do spiritual work, as you probably know. Relationships are the best example of that, just how difficult they can be. But it's been an amazing ride for sure. So, leading up to what I want to share with you, which I feel is the most exciting, Tesla himself made reference to what he was experiencing as far as the technologies he was introducing and interplanetary communication, specifically from Mars. That's where he felt a lot of the communications were coming from. And so I just want to qualify before I share with you what I'm about to share, that back in the day when Native Americans would watch white people reading papers, they thought they were crazy. There's this talking paper, they must be nuts, you know. And then cell phones, for example, people thought the idea of communicating the way we do today is just so out there. So there is a sort of precedent for this. So, oh God, did the video just disappear? Let's see. Okay, maybe it did. Oh, shit. So there is a recording, should be there. There it is. Hopefully you can hear it. Do I have to press this to make it go? Let's see. If we can get that video, yeah. This was during an Akashic record reading.
These councils that are going to look at things. What do they say?
Yeah. Did you hear that? That like, okay. You want to play it again?
What do they say? What do they say?
So it was such an interesting moment. It was the middle of an Akashic record reading where she's connecting with this Andromedan council that's trying to communicate to me. She pauses and she's like, what are they saying? And then you hear this sound, which at the time I'm like, this is freaking amazing. You know, let's see what we could do with this. So I sent it right over to John Stuart Reid, the scientist that some of you met this morning, and he created a loop of that sound and created a cymoglyph with it. So that is the next video. Yeah, if you can play that.
Andromeda, take one.
That'd be really cool with some house music in the background, right? All right? Okay, cool. You can stop it. It's about 30 seconds. So then he analyzed the geometry of that particular glyph later, and he was impressed that this was indicative, again, of a highly evolved being, according to his experience working with humans, due to the sevenfold geometry. And what he said before he rendered it was that he could tell by the sound signature it would render really well, because it was beautiful to him. I mean, it sounded really creepy to me. But he said we have the adage with the simoscope, beauty in equals beauty out. So it's all the more significant because of John's history, because of the fact that in 97, he went to the pyramid, he laid in the sarcophagus, he was healed, and afterwards, because he basically healed up with wax the broken part of the sarcophagus and put a membrane on top with sand, he struck it, and it created these glyphs that looked just like hieroglyphs. So something was going on clearly there for him, and he realized that he could create a device with a water-based membrane that could turn all sound visible. Yeah, that's him. He's like a kid, like in '97, in the King's Chamber, the sarcophagus. So the fact that, to me, this is the most interesting part. It's legend, right, that in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the so-called Atlantean, right, it's believed he was 36,000 years old, and he was one of the original, you could say, quasi-ET beings that created the pyramid, right, this alternative view that Egyptologists like freak out when you start talking about alternative histories. But in this downloaded, the tablets, he says, lie in the sarcophagus of stone in my chamber, then to reveal I to him the great mysteries. In it, the great pyramid, I built my knowledge of magic science so that I might be here when I return from Amente. So I found that to be so freaking fascinating. He didn't know about that, but it was actually in the Emerald Tablets, which are supposed to have given birth to alchemy, which, as you know, one of the great pursuits of alchemy is the philosopher's stone, which could turn lead into gold. And I'll show you that's actually happened already. So in his understanding of these structures is they were used for healing, actually. So, one of the purposes of going back is to use intonation and then use the Simoscope portable version to absorb the information from the chamber and then analyze it using my father's work, which enables us to digitalize the glyphs and then better understand what's going on behind the scenes. Let's see. So anyway, so that was the Akashic, is how that particular recording came to me. And I just want to point out that this very well-known scientist who was nominated twice for the Nobel Prize basically used the metaphor of the Akashic field almost like a place where everything that's ever happened is recorded. It's actually in the second one. So there's starting to be an awareness that what was once called ether, or you could call it the quantum vacuum, is recording all experiences, past, present, and future in terms of probabilities. And that when people with gifts like Akashic record readers go in, they're actually interacting with that field. The same field that we interacted with today, Tia helped us to access in order to even physically affect other things. And of course, the importance for us here is like the Maharishi effect, or being in coherence as a species. Once we start to hold these principles in our heart, we're able to ultimately usher in that new age. And it's not just new age, fluff. It's actually science-based, which is what everyone wants to hear. This is also a great quote by Robert Buck, who wrote Cosmic Consciousness, which he described all these examples throughout history of people attaining the state of complete oneness with the universe. These days, you just go to your local corner shaman and take a hit of bufo and you're there, right? Didn't have before you had to get crucified like Christ, or get like a coconut knocks you on the head. Mysticism then is the perception of the universe and all of its seemingly disparate entities existing in a unified, bound together, a whole bound together by love. That's so profound, the people that have reached these states. It isn't just an intellectual experience, it's a heart-based experience, and the human heart is so powerful. So I know I'm going to move through here a bit because we're going to have our discussion, but what we're looking at in ways with this notion of the Akashic field is that if you think about the universe as presently conceived, where there's this Big Bang event and there are galaxies just moving away from each other, and so far, at such a far distance, there's no way that light-mediated communication could happen, or causal connections, is that there's starting to become an awareness that there's either superluminal communication, or before the known universe manifests, it's already in a state of complete oneness. And this is something I think my father is going to talk a little bit about, too, in a bit here. Okay, yeah, in fact, there's a few of the slides where my father has discerned a universal pattern at all scales that involve these things called long-tail histograms. And due to his discovery of this classifier called Planck-Shannon classifier, we'll have the ability, theoretically, to measure spiritual states in a way that we wouldn't otherwise. Or the glyphs are holographic, so they have immense information, but we just see the aesthetic layer on the surface that's analog. So we are at the precipice, I think, of creating a whole new realm of understanding around, what makes up life, and he'll be talking a little bit about that. That's another example. Let's see. I did my independent study, actually, at Rutgers, looking at the relationship between Morris Merleau-Ponty's ontology of the flesh and my father's work on complementarism, which is their way of saying that yin-yang pervades everything, right? That there's at all scales. So ancient futures simply refers to the fact that we're in cyclical times. So in a way, the ancients, in fact, in Sumer, saw the future as if it was the past, and the past is the future. And if you're in a cycle where you're coming to and from the golden age, that's how it would appear. So there's all these different models that are starting to merge of time. We went to precession. It's pretty profound. I just want to show you this philosopher's stone-like effect, if we could play that video.
Sonoluminescence.
The first time I saw sonoluminescence was in a darkened room. I was transfixed to look at this spherical flask of fluid. And you look into the center, and in the center see a glowing blue-purple light, which could be seen with the unaided eye. It looked like a star in the heavens.
It's called a star in a jar. Immense temperatures are released by this phenomenon, sonoluminescence. So it's a sound-induced cavitation event that creates temperatures that are as high as found on the surface of the sun. And that happens just in water, with sound inducing it. And this is an example of the pistol shrimp, my favorite little creature, because it's able to make a strike in the water that creates this cavitation bubble and can split aquarium glass or a diver's finger. And it produces temperatures that are almost the same as the surface of the sun. So these examples help us to better understand how the ancients might have created the megaliths that we see, the structures, without any of the technologies we use today. Acoustic levitation is another example. There's another slide that I missed in there. It was about Tibetans in the 30s. A engineer was able to show through these horns, right? They're able to levitate these stones into place. And, this is kind of what we're to recapture. That's why the theme Ancient Future is just really bringing back technologies that were once universally available in previous high civilizations, but due to partially astrophysical events that induce cataclysm. And then, of course, there's another way of looking at it, is that we collectively needed to learn certain karmic experiences, and we hadn't reached enough coherence to avoid that sort of tragedy from happening again. And we're on the precipice of that right now, of course. So, but I always love talking about Mark Leclerc's work because they literally induced a water crystal vent. It's a fifth phase of water. It's about 5 times as hard as diamond, induced by a laser in water that was able to transmute the plate at which it strikes at near relativistic speeds into all the elements known into this ore, which include like palladium and gold and even transuranic elements, which is why this technology is controversial, because it could be weaponized, basically. But so that's the philosopher's stone, basically. And so science has now reached the point where the impossible is now known to be not only possible, it's actually happening. Oh, water. Thank you. And so, but knowing all this, and there's so many examples of technology, here's Baalbek, Lebanon. I mean, these are 1,000-ton megaliths. They're just like carving out of the stone. Like, no one can explain the present technology. Okay, so I'm going to just wrap this up to go to our discussion piece, but the whole point that I'm trying to make is that we are at a place as a civilization where we have all the technologies. We know how to pretty much create a civilization that can run off of the elements into, forever, basically, safely, cleanly. But the inner technologies, which is why I love this community and what we're doing here, which is healing ourselves, learning how to love ourselves, letting that ripple out into this flower of life, right? That is ultimately how we are going to be able to manage the affordances we have, because we have all of the technology we need in order to get to the golden age. 2030 sounds like a good date for me. I think it gives us a little time to get there. But, given that we're now balancing those elements, I think that there's a good chance we'll make it. And that's why I also want to bring up my dad and Tia, because he has come to a very similar conclusion about the universe that I think will enlighten us all.
We're going to bring some chairs on the stage as well.
And the wonderful Tia Kansara. Thank you. Yeah, 3 chairs.
In comes Professor Emeritus of Theoretical Cell Biology.
Yay!
From the Department of Pharmacology and Toxic Rutgers.
Correct.
Boom. Welcome.
Thank you.
AKA Care Bear.
What is that?
AKA also known as Care Bear.
That's it.
That's his
She
nickname.
calls me Care Bear.
Good heart.
Where do we begin? This is a fascinating topic.
Yeah, I mean, Dad, I would like to start with, your whole life you've tried to understand really the nature of life, and that at some point in his research, he realized, if I recall correctly, that you were a bunch of cells looking at itself through the microscope in this self-knowing universe model. Mm-hmm. And then you've also come to this concept of the Miamiator, which I'd love for you to share, which is about happiness and love. So feel free to...
Okay. I am 85 years old. I came to this country in 1962 when I was about 25 as an exchange student from Seoul National University in Korea to University of Minnesota, where I got a bachelor's degree and then went on to get the PhD degree in the State University of New York at Albany. And of the 60 years of my 85 years life, 20 years was spent in the university environment as a student and postdoc and researcher. And in 1982, I obtained a tenured position at the Rutgers University in New Jersey, where I spent 4 decades continuing my teaching and research. And I retired from the university just last August. And unexpectedly, I thought I would remain in New Jersey to continue my research as an emeritus professor, where I still have my office. But by the influence of my children, Mia and Doug, and later with Tia, I was persuaded to come to Miami instead of staying in New Jersey.
Party up. Party time.
And before I retired, I thought I achieved what I started out to do when I first came to this country, which is to formulate theory of everything. from my
no
own
small task.
perspective.
No small task. Super easy.
Yeah, no. But since I came to Miami, things have changed. Instead of theory of everything, theories from everything.
Oh.
Which is very pertinent to all of you here. You may think that only few people can develop theories of everything. But I now believe that every one of us can develop our own theories from our own experience. And this is supported by Aristotle's metaphysics. He talked about universals and individuals. I heard of these two terms before, but I couldn't understand what it was until recently, when I read a philosophical paper published by a young Italian philosopher. Universals cannot exist itself. Universals exist only if there are individuals which manifest universal properties. So I apply this to the concept of God. I used to think of God, there's only one God, Christian God. So since I'm not a Christian, I was very reluctant to use the word God in my writings or in my conversations. But after reading Aristotle's so-called ontological square of Aristotle, I became liberated. I can use the word God in the sense of Aristotle. Okay? Aristotle's God is a universal God which includes or which is manifest in individual gods, just like Christian God or Hindu Brahman, or in Korean, the God is called Hananim. Hananim means oneness. So, universal God has many names as individually. So, similarly, theory of everything, instead of theory of everything, theory from everything means there is a so-called theory as a universal concept, and it is manifested in individual theories. And that's what I've done. As I've developed an individual theory in my 40 years of discussion, research, and this is only one of many possible theories from every one of you who have your own history, own life history. Life history you can use to build a theory of life.
Dad, how about the Miami-ator? Can you tell them what that's about?
Okay. Miami concept came to me again after coming to this state, Florida. Before I came, I was happy, but I didn't really know what true happiness was, what true love was, what true beauty was. But coming here, due to my relatives and friends that I have, both in my relatives and also in the senior facility that I live in now in Miami, called Mirabel, and I have several friends I formed there, which influenced my thinking too. And as I said before, as a scientist, until I came here, I developed a theory of everything, which I called Shilongator, because I lectured on this in India, Shillong, India, in 1986. So I thought that was it. That was my life's work. I've done my job and I'm ready to go. And then I came down here and experienced happiness, love, and beauty. So I decided, and then I also learned about the tragedies of Mariupol in Kiev,
In you.
in Ukraine. So I came to the conclusion that all the human knowledge that we have can be summarized in theories of everything. But depending on how we utilize artificial intelligence in the future, we can develop into very happy land like Miami, which I call Miami Atoll, or tragedy to Mariupol Atoll. So it is up to us to make happiness or war. And this is a conclusion that I think is logically derivable from scientific point of view. But all of you probably are not scientists, but would agree with this because our knowledge can be gained not only from scientific research, but everyday life. And this is enlightenment, I think. All of you can be enlightened in your own way and develop your own theories of life.
Beautiful. Also, one of the conclusions of the Miami-ator is that there is more matter than antimatter due to this asymmetry, right? Almost a purpose in the universe towards happiness, more love than hate. Is that what you came to?
Yes. We don't know that, we don't know how the universe began. But let's assume that scientists are right and say that it began 13.8 billion years ago with a Big Bang, okay? Mathematically, at the time of Big Bang, number of particles and antiparticles are equal, mathematically speaking. But in reality, in the universe that we are living, there are more particles than antiparticles. Okay? So they don't annihilate, mutually annihilate, but there is something positive, particles or matter. And to me, this is an indication, this is a sign that this universe is productive and filled with love. That's my interpretation. Of course, there are many other interpretations possible. So Miami Atoll is as a result of there being more positive particles or more matter than antimatter, which I think may mean that we are living in a universe which is filled with love, and we are destined to love than to hate.
I love that. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. I think that speaks to what everyone really feels and knows, that, you know, if we're in alignment with what this miracle is, always unfolding, then it's going to continue to blossom into this beautiful golden age we're referring to. And to know that teleogenically the cosmos is biased towards that, you know, that's what God is, that's what creation is, that's the beauty of us remembering, you know, our true nature. So that's beautiful for you to come to that period, to this realization after all these years, Dad.
And this also means that there may be other universes that we don't know where there are more antiparticles than particles, more tragedy, unhappiness than happiness. I think we are lucky to be living in this universe, which I think is destined to love.
Yeah, right. I love it. Yeah. Beautiful. Wow. Thank you, Dad. Are we time? Do we have time, or are we 5? Okay. Yeah, so also another thing, Dad, is that Tia, you and I have had amazing conversations about the Akashic field and the wave function, perhaps, and the collapse of the psi function, which is the totality of all known things, right, in physics. And so there's this thing where if there's energy put in, then it collapses, is that right? But that the Akashic record, as we've been describing, where all future and past or this future in terms of probabilities is inscribed. Is there a basis for that at all in physics?
I think so. I think there's a consistency or agreement between mathematics of quantum mechanics and meditative life that people, ancient philosophers, have reached through meditation and so on. What people call Akashic field in philosophy or literature, I think, is what quantum mechanicians call wave function. Wave function exists in a mathematical space which is complex. Mathematical space which has both real number axis and complex number. Whereas normal space has only real number. So because of the complex number, what happens in the so-called Hilbert space is not understandable by no common knowledge. Miracles happen there all the time. So what miracle happens is, I think, in the quantum mechanical wave function. So there may be connection.
That's what I think we call Akashic.
So we are both real and complex. I use the term visible and invisible world in one of my models of the universe. And visible world is we are familiar with. But invisible world is strange. There are things that we cannot understand. But it's, in a way, it's real. It's both real as visible.
Yeah.
And I define the enlightenment state as a state of mind which transcends both visible and invisible. And this state may be reached by deep meditation or lifelong effort to learn, to practice, to reach truth level. And this is what I think all of you are able to do through organization like this. So good luck to you.
Yay! Thank you, Dad. Tia, do you want to wrap it up? I'd love to know your thinking.
That's fantastic. When we first conversed about this topic, it went from an incredibly scientific, heady, cognitive topic. And during your transition to Miami, you've gone from cogito ergo sum to I love, therefore I am. And it's an incredible experience to witness that in you. Because at the end of my PhD, I remember this one moment where I no longer had to prove anything to anybody, but I understood the topic so well I could interpret it. And I feel that with the body of work that you've had, that you're at that place of translating it in such a humane way that we can all understand and experience what you have in 40 years. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to say that I'm the father of Zaya here. I might have taught him biology as he was growing up in my family. But he was doing something from when he was in high school, like going to Buddhist retreat and so on in northern New Jersey, and I couldn't understand him. And when he was as an undergraduate student, he came to my room when I was alone. My wife was away, and he asked me to try LSD.
Oh, no, he didn't. Oh, no, he didn't. cat's out of the bag.
Gotta update my Wikipedia page now.
So I did, but I didn't reach the state of enlightenment that he reached. In any case, I didn't understand his world, but he is my spiritual teacher. He's been spiritual from when he was little, and I now understand him now.
Thank you.
Tia, I haven't met Tia only a few months ago.
Yeah.
But he doesn't say much. He's quiet. But I communicate with her through non-linguistic means, and I know what she stands for, and I admire her.
Bravo! Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, what about Unite? Okay, so last thing is that part of what we're trying to create is like a digital flower of life to invite everybody in to share their gifts. Unite.live is the platform, is inspired by a lot of beauty, a lot of vision for what we're all bringing together as a community. So we'd love for you to use it. It's free to try, and it's part of us creating this new, more beautiful world. And the recordings for all of Aurea are also on Unite. So unite.live, or unite.live is another way of putting it. So thank you so much for everybody for the opportunity to share, and let's create this beautiful world together.